Okay, let's...
Cat's eye!
Just run the music.
Welcome to the episode Cat's Eye!
Split media. Cinesthesia. Help.
To the king.
Welcome back to Hell to the King. We're the Cinesthesia Boys, and we got our cat's eyes on you.
Cat's Eye! We're the Cinesthesia Boys.
The Cinesthesia Boys. You need a job done, called the Cinesthesia Boys.
I was telling someone at a party the other day about what I'm doing with my life, and I was like, hey, I'm doing a podcast now called Cinesthesia, but it's spelled wrong. And they were like, oh, okay.
That seems like the right level of reaction.
Yeah. Jason, I don't know if I've mentioned my vehicular situations enough for this to be interesting to listeners at all, but I checked in with you a couple of days ago when we were doing Firestarter, and I had 0 out of 3 vehicles working, I think. And one of them is almost working now, and then one of the other ones I took to a shop today, and they looked at it and they were like, oh, this is a simple issue. Your fuel line is just bent. It's crimped up over here. So replaced a little bit of fuel line, and then it was running fine, and I drove about a quarter of a mile. I left as they were closing. I drove about a quarter of a mile, and my headlight caught on fire. Anyway, that's where I'm at.
I feel like it's worth clarifying certain experiences for the listening audience. We should have done this to run out yesterday's episode. Because I actually have things to say about this movie. But one of the episodes previous, we were delayed recording for about 20 minutes because I received a text from Jim that said, oh no, I dropped a piece of metal in the dark grass working on my car. I need to find it. And then 20 minutes later, I got a text that said, whatever, let's record. After we record, I'm just going to drag the grass with a magnet.
It's true. And it worked. I found it with a magnet.
I also, the last time I was in Texas with you, we definitely had to stop or jump out of the car every time we had to stop at a stoplight to jump your car.
Yeah, it wouldn't hold an idle. So Jason, I had a little jumper box, and Jason would run out at every light so we could restart the car. Anyway, I'm a man who lives in a garbage pile. Cat's eye!
Jim, I cannot fathom that this movie is by Lewis Teague.
It is significantly better than Cujo.
This is the same director as Cujo.
Yeah, big step up from the Cujo. It is also, Jason, at first I thought a direct sequel to Cujo, and then I realized this movie must canonically happen in the middle of the movie Cujo, because it starts with Cujo from Cujo chasing a cat down a street, and Cujo dies at the end of Cujo.
That's true, but the cat then gets on a ship?
Yes.
Or in a truck?
Yeah. So
I don't know how long the cat's in the truck. Cujo could
I'm just saying,
by the time the truck makes it to the city.
Begins during Cujo. It is a sequel to Cujo.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And yet, my God, it's also
set in a movie. It's also set in a world where the movie Christine exists, Jason, because there's a car with a bumper sticker that references Christine. This movie is a full-on slam-a-jam to your brain.
Yeah,
it's not going to let you know the rules.
The movie's an anthology film that uses a cat to link the stories. This cat sort of travels all over the country, wandering in and out of different people's lives, and it wanders into these 3 stories that are all, Stephen King stories. The beginning, the cat is being chased by Cujo and runs past a car with a bumper sticker for Christine, and probably some other things that I didn't even catch.
Sure, yeah.
Sissy
Spacek
for Christine, by the way.
I would put
the
that
bumper
car.
sticker's on a I've seen
like
it
a Fury or something
on the new book rack at Brookline Booksmith.
Oh, really?
Used bookstores.
That exact bumper sticker?
That exact bumper
That's
sticker.
so funny. I assume they just made that for the movie. I mean, maybe they did.
No, well, I mean, maybe, but they also sold it. No shitter's going to get between me and Christine. And I saw it and took a picture of it and sent it to my friend Christine, and she's like, "Yeah, I've seen it."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, probably you have.
You're like, yeah, but it's still true. Get over it, Christine.
So the big difference is that I'm going to hang on between Cujo and this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to, maybe unfairly to Lewis Teague, but also, no, I don't know how fair we need to be to Lewis Teague.
Yeah.
I'm going to fall back on Orson Welles, who
is not in this movie.
The average director is the most useless person on a film set.
Yeah.
Now, that's the average director, and there are above average directors like Mr. Wells himself, but the average director on a film set doesn't really matter if you have a screenplay that works, you have technicians that know what they're doing, and you have actors who are going to show up and do their jobs.
Sure.
This movie has James Woods.
Yes. Certified creep, but brilliant actor, James Woods.
Absolute creep, brilliant actor. It has Drew Barrymore at Firestarter age,
yes.
who we have already gushed over her preternatural acting ability.
Fact.
It has, who else does this have? It has some.
It definitely has other people.
Somebody else who's
down.
amazing. Who was in it? The guy, the old gambler in the second one is an amazing dude. He's like a big.
He is.
Who? I'm blanking on his name. This is gonna kill me.
No, Jason, carbohydrates are gonna kill you.
All right. Well, I'll come back to it. But he's great.
Figure it out.
He's Baron Harkonnen or Vladimir Harkonnen, in David Lynch's Dune, and he's
whoa! I didn't put that together.
The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Is he?
He's in what? Where is he? Oh, here I found him. This is so important to me. He was in the original Broadway production of American Buffalo. His name is Kenneth McMillan, and he's fucking great.
He is really good in this movie. I mean, and
yes.
I assume in all those others.
Yeah. So there's everybody, even the people who you don't necessarily recognize right away, they all show up to work.
Yes. Everyone in this movie is doing what they need to do.
Yeah, the acting is good. The screenplay itself is by Stephen King.
Yes.
Which is, I think, overall a positive.
I don't 100% agree.
Well, we can talk about that, but I would say at least he has learned some more about screenwriting, I think, probably from his work on Creepshow.
Sure, yeah.
This is a step up.
It is more cinematically
from Creepshow
than Creepshow, for sure.
And it, like, everything pretty much works. We can there might be some quibbles. We can talk about that in a minute.
Let's quibble.
But like, it's obviously definitely better than whatever mouth breather wrote Cujo.
Yes.
And it's a step up from King's already work that we already sort of appreciated in Creepshow for its purposeful shallowness and simplicity. Music by Alan Silvestri. Mm-hmm. I don't remember who did the music for Cujo. It was probably fine, but Alan Silvestri's a dude.
Yeah, he's a step up from whoever.
Yeah,
did
like
that
he matters.
Even if it was him, but younger.
The big one.
Yeah.
Did you see who shot this movie?
If I did, I didn't write it down.
Jack motherfucking Cardiff.
Whoa. Okay.
Shot this movie.
I did not see that.
AKA Jack Cardiff probably directed this movie.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm sorry if Lewis Teague is still alive and listening.
I'm sorry if he's still alive. Zing.
No matter what Lewis Teague could have done on set, the person who shot Black Narcissus, Red Shoes, and Under Capricorn, and so many other movies, The African Queen, that makes all the difference in the world. This movie feels like somebody knew what they were doing when they moved the camera.
Yes.
Sure as hell wasn't Lewis Teague.
For sure.
So those are the big differences between Cujo that, take us from Cujo, so far still bottom of the barrel in this series,
Yeah.
to Cat's Eye, which, while not the best, not genius, was shockingly entertaining. I'm putting this solidly in your camp.
That's interesting, Jason, because I would put it more in your camp than mine.
Really?
Yeah.
This is some gift of the Magi shit, right?
Jason, I sold my hair to make this movie bad.
Wait, what didn't you like about it?
I felt like I agree with almost everything you said. I think that a lot of the acting is very strong, and I think it's shot. I think every shot in it varies from capable to very good. I think the effects work in it is inspired. I think in that first, so the first story is about James Woods wants to give up smoking, so he goes to a mafia front group that will use mafia techniques on you if you smoke. Right? They'll like assault your wife, which seems a little weird in 2019. But they'll also,
I have something to say about that in a minute.
But there's this scene where he's at a party and like a guy takes a drag on a cigarette and then exhales smoke for 15 seconds, just a long jet, and then a painting starts smoking. And I think all of that is brilliant. I think that scene, I feel like Lewis Teague doesn't know when to stop, but I feel like it's all genius. And the last one is about Drew Barrymore having a pet cat that her mom thinks is going to steal her breath, but there's actually a little demon in her wall that wants to steal her breath, and the cat's fighting it. And all of that is done in miniatures and on like larger scale sets with a guy in a suit, and it's so well done. So for me, all of the effect stuff was brilliant. But I also thought every single story dragged in the middle. I thought all of them had stretches of being pretty boring.
That's interesting. That I didn't feel that.
Especially, I'm going to say especially the middle one. I thought, for me, the first one was the strongest. James Woods Wants to Quit Smoking, the short film, I thought was a very strong film. I was like pretty much entertained the whole time, even though for me, I honestly think the weakest part of this film, from my perspective, is the script. I think that Stephen King has definitely, it's written to be more cinematic than was Creepshow. But I also felt like I felt like all of them felt kind of padded out to me. The first one the least. The second one I thought dragged a ton. The second one...
Well, the first one has the most meat on the bone.
For sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it also has James Woods, who is just, he's, even
if nothing's happening, he's going to, like, snarl and twist. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. So, and the first one, if they were all as entertaining as the first one, I would have been, like, hands down good movie. And I'll settle for it falling in the good movie column overall. Point for me. But I do think that the second one in particular and the third one to a degree both really dragged for me.
I can see what you mean, and I think I think you're probably right. I did watch this while I was doing dishes and cleaning up the kitchen. I just had it on, so it's possible that during the dragging sequences I just was able to tune out a little more efficiently.
Scrubbing, yeah.
Which it is, I'd say this is a great movie for doing the dishes too.
Oh, super. Because it is, I would say 75 to 80% of this movie is very entertaining.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like we don't disagree as much as we think.
I just wanted to fight with you.
This in I'm glad that we did. I'm not putting it in the top camp. No. I was more just like if I'm stepping back and taking this movie among all movies. Yeah, it's not that great, but it's fun enough, and it has enough things that I specifically like, like James Woods, like a practical goblin that comes out of the wall.
Agreed. Like Baby Drew Barrymore,
like Kenneth McMillan's performance as the insane gambler.
So that,
and I also the whole sequence of the second story, The Ledge, is about a guy who forces another guy to walk all the way around a super tall building on a tiny ledge. Yeah, and that effectively got to me.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because ledges do freak me out a little bit. So that at least for me was that worked.
I think for me, that story, I felt no tension of that guy walking around the ledge, but which partially, I think for a few reasons. One is, that whole story is sort of like I would say a stepped down version of the Leslie Nielsen story from Creepshow.
100%. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about.
But Kenneth McMillan, right? He is brilliant, and the whole thing starts with him betting with another guy whether the cat that's in all of it can cross the street, and the other guy's like, well, can I call the cat or whatever, and Kenneth McMillan like 6 times screams, anyone can do anything, which I want as a ringtone. It's so good, and you're like, oh, this man is like manic and brilliant, and I guess that's just setting us up for later. He's gonna spray a hose at the other guy, but I think I wanted it to play into the whole story more. But then, so the other guy he makes walk around the ledge is like a character that's introduced a third of the way through the story, and he's just a guy who's having sex with this main guy's wife. And so I didn't have any empathy for him, aside from like generalized human being empathy. He's just like a guy, but
which, as we've discussed, maybe goes further for me than it does for you.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't care about this guy. And then him walking around the ledge seemed like it wasn't that hard. It's like a bird pecks at him at one point, and he like blows an air horn maybe and sprays a hose at him, but nothing ever like, it never feels like he's being derailed. It feels like he just kind of walks around the top of a building. You're like, okay.
No, it worked better for me. Like,
That's fair.
He definitely, I thought that guy acted being afraid really well, which got me pretty good.
That's fair.
And again, I might just be more afraid of things like that than you are.
Sure.
Like, I could see if we were in a situation where, like, a window needed to be opened, you jumping over the railing, being like, yes, no problem, there's a ledge right here.
Yeah.
Being like, okay, I'm gonna move very carefully across the ledge to get it. And you're like, what are you talking about? There's a ledge. Why don't we just use the ledge?
Just walk with your feet on the ledge, Jason.
Yeah,
it's wider than a foot, so
very...
it's fine.
So the one thing I did want to talk about with this movie that you brought up a little bit already is that there is...
The rapey bit?
Yeah, well, there's this theme kind of emerging through these movies. Mm-hmm. Didn't expect, maybe because I didn't read enough King...
Sure.
To have seen it before, but wives get a really raw deal.
Yes. Stephen King loves teenage boys to the near exception of everyone else, and then has sympathy for adult men and does not care about women.
Well, so here's the thing, though.
Young girls, I guess, to a degree, but like adult women, I don't. Has he ever had a... Well, I don't know. Say what you're saying.
I'd have to think about that. I'd have to I would have to think more about adult women in his work overall. I don't have a thesis on that yet. But the wives thing specifically, and families getting a really raw deal, it does make me feel like what we're seeing, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I mean, we have, The Shining. Mm-hmm. Husband goes crazy, his wife and kid, and tries to murder them.
Yes.
We have the story in Creepshow with Leslie Nielsen.
Yes.
Where the wife is punished. Mm-hmm. Husband.
We don't even see it. She's murdered off screen.
Yeah, but the husband's clearly depicted as insane, right? He's this evil, insane guy, and that punishment's part of his evil.
Sure.
Which I think is important. And Cujo. Mm-hmm. It's a wife and son being terrorized by a rabid dog, an animal that's out of control. The husband is too far away or impotent or detached from being able to stop. Gets there too late anyway. He gets there after the wife has already taken care of business. That would actually be one of the arguments.
Kind of exceptions.
What you were saying is like, the mother does finish it off. Like,
kind of, though. She's like too weak to do it for several days. It's not until her child literally dies in her arms that she musters the strength.
Right? Yeah. But it is still this, like, she. At least in the movie, she keeps them alive that long. She keeps trying. Like, I agree that it's poorly done, but the intent, I think, seems to be to depict her in a heroic light.
I don't totally agree with that, but
well, no, I mean, she also is she's trifling.
Yeah,
that's part of what brings all this down. But we have this like an ongoing thing. The wife and Firestarter is killed. And so then we have this story where James Wood's wife is kidnapped and subject to electric shocks in a blank room. Yes. Because that is the technique that Quitters Incorporated, which is a mafia-run outfit to get people to stop smoking, which is
the most charming
beautiful
part
idea.
is that they're like, oh, an old mafia boss died of lung cancer, so we started this anti-smoking group.
Yeah.
It's like,
so the way they do it is they threaten your family.
Yeah.
And like, so
it's what they know how to do.
James Woods comes in and goes, oh, so what's the idea? You electric shock me until I stop smoking? And like, no, we electric shock your wife and you have to watch.
Yeah.
And like, that's a really solid idea, but it crystallized for me what I feel like is happening through all of this, because it's the husband watching the wife suffer and not being able to stop it.
Yeah.
And the wife is suffering because the husband is weak.
Yeah.
Because the husband is, I'm leaning into it here, addicted to something. I feel like all of these stories have been barely coded messages about Stephen King's sublimated guilt about the horrors he must have put his family through from his pain addiction.
I do feel like all of the Stephen King films that I've watched so far are very thinly veiled. I don't think I've ever watched one and been like, oh, I don't know what Stephen King was going through while he was writing this. They're so directly about him and his current struggles.
Yeah.
And it does seem like a lot of it is about him doing coke and being a terrible member of his family.
I just hadn't put it together quite to that, like, huge degree, and it almost makes sense that Cujo is the book that he least remembers writing.
Yeah,
and the whole story of Cujo,
because he's gone. He's gone for all of Cujo. Yeah, exactly. That's why he doesn't remember. The husband
is absent and is functionally replaced in the trio
by an angry dog,
by a completely out of control, deadly animal.
Yeah.
Like that, you can't make a more perfect analogy than that.
Yeah.
That he made in a subconscious cocaine fugue, just writing it like that. It actually has increased my respect for him as an artist, outputting something true and felt as opposed to writing things that he thinks are cool.
Oh, sure.
I always felt like King was a real writer.
Yeah.
And I've said this over and over again.
Yes.
Not a genius, but not a hack.
Yeah.
Like, he's a legit writer. He's coming to the job and doing the work and thinking it through and trying to create characters and situations that feel real. But this is the first time I felt like, oh no, he has demons that
he's
are
working through
in these stories.
Jason, do you know the official term for a guy who's halfway between a genius and a hack? You call them a gene hack man. No, I agree with you. It does feel like he's like, I feel like all of these stories are halfway to being diaries. He's like half a diarist. It's just him.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense for somebody who writes so much that it would just come out that way, right?
Yeah, because he's just it's like pure id, his writing style, right? It's just like Psyche to page.
Yeah, and I mean, especially when he was in the height of
Coke
his
days.
Cigarettes and cocaine and booze, and like just stripped down to the Lacanian real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was trying to explain I showed my students some surrealist films the other day, and I was trying to explain to them the project of surrealism in a very brief manner without getting too deeply into it.
Sure.
And they were kind of stuck. Some of them were kind of stuck on the notion of like, well, how did they do this? Like, how did they come up with these ideas? How would they write this together? Sure. Because it's not like you can make up a story and then figure out how the story goes or like what makes sense. Like, they have to create these anti-rational vignettes that then somehow also stitch together.
Yeah.
And my glib answer was like, well, as somebody who's written things with somebody else, I'm pretty sure they just went in a room and yelled ideas at each other until they came back out.
Yeah.
Like, that's the easy answer. But then I gave them some examples of some of the techniques that surrealists
like automatic writing and
stuff.
a certain
state. Yeah, like automatic writing, where like you'd make yourself stay up for a week and then go to bed and then set your alarm to wake you up in 20 minutes and just write whatever is in your mind,
Yeah.
And I feel like King's output is so prolific that his writing must become at a certain point almost automatic writing, like in terms of the concerns and the feelings that bleed into this just logarithmic output that he creates.
Well, one of the other methods of automatic writing is lots of drugs, right? It seems like
Well, and I mentioned that too. Yeah,
he's functionally just doing that, but pushing really hard to make a narrative come out of it, which obviously the surrealists and Dadaists were not. They were like...
Yeah, it's like if Jack Kerouac was a horror writer and also felt bad about anything ever.
We're like a true sympathetic human being, and also dealt with... that's it, really. That's the only difference.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I talked way too much right now, but I was really excited by that revelation.
That's a good revelation. I think that's an important lens for us to use on all these.
And it'll go away, presumably, as he kicks cocaine and moves on to other concepts.
Having seen a few of his movies from later in his career, I do think that it remains true, but it shifts away from cocaine guilt. I don't think he ever stops writing about directly what's happening in his brain at the moment.
Oh, no, that's what I mean. It'll shift away from the cocaine guilt. The specific theme of this group of movies, which is a family is terrorized because of the husband's A, insanity, B, absence, C, weakness.
Weaknesses, yeah.
Agreed. I also might just relate to that concept.
I'm sure you're a great present dad, Jim.
I'm sure I am, but I've spent my entire life believing that people will suffer because of my weakness or like my inability to be on top of things. So like I definitely in a very self-involved way really relate to that kind of narrative.
Sure. Yeah. It's a very relatable guilt, right? You're like, I'm going to fail and everyone else will feel it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only reason I do anything at all, Jason. That's why I clear my evenings to talk to you for this podcast. That's why I get any work done.
Actually raised Catholic, but I still somehow genetically inherited my grandfather's Catholicism in terms of guilt and shame.
Yeah. You also literally inherited his weird old vet stools.
That is the case.
It's the case of vet tools.
This feels like... Oh, no, go ahead.
I have two other things I want to mention. Is that okay?
Please, I've talked the entire time. I'm going to just shut up now.
One is that there's a fun runner. The third story in this film, the cat is a main character, and so there are bits in the first two where the cat just sort of passes through the story, where Drew Barrymore appears in like a shop window, or I don't remember where it is in the second one, and is like, "You have to find me. You must save me," and you're like, "What is happening?" And then in the third section, the cat has to save her from the monster in a wall, but that's like a cute little runner they put through the whole thing.
At the beginning of that third story, when the cat runs into the house, they do this thing where it's from the point of view of the goblin running into the house, and you hear that little like but I didn't quite I even rewatched it a second time because I wasn't sure exactly what I'd seen because I was doing dishes, and I still couldn't tell
if it was the cat,
whether it was supposed to be the cat or not. I thought it was just the cat's internal monologue.
Because at that point they haven't actually introduced the little goblin creature. So the cat's running through the woods and you're watching the cat, and then they cut to a view that might as well be the cat's. Like maybe it's going through a different part of the woods, but you can't tell. Yeah, and it's like... I
thought they were just introducing that as the cat.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's what the cat does. Yeah, no, I had the same experience. And I was
especially because then the creature comes out of the wall later, so why did it have to run into the house to begin with?
Why was it in the woods? I'm still not convinced that wasn't the cat POV, except that the rest of the movie has the cat in it, and we never see that except for that one moment. I don't know.
And the goblin makes those sounds.
That's true. The goblin does.
So it's like, obviously it was meant to be the goblin, but it was just done in such a way that I swore it was the cat.
It feels like the cat. It definitely feels like the cat.
All right, well, that's Cat's Eye.
Cat's Eye!
Eye of the tiger, which is a kind of a cat.
The other thing I wanted to mention is that the mother in the third story doesn't want Drew Barrymore to have this cat in the house, General, because is the name of the cat. General is the cat's name. Because it's going to steal her breath, which is the second time Stephen King has used that bit.
Wait, which was the first one? Remind me.
I don't remember.
Or don't.
If I remembered, I would. But there was definitely a movie we watched earlier where someone was afraid cats would steal your breath. I can't remember.
Whatever.
But that's her like primary motivator to keep the cat outside. And then we find out that this little wall creature is literally trying to steal her breath. And then the cat kills the little wall monster. And at the end of the movie, the cat hops up on sleeping Drew Barrymore and crawls up to her face. And she like wakes up and breathes in its face. And I was like, oh, is the thesis of this story that cats don't have to steal your breath because you just willingly give it to them? Because that's part of having a creature you love, is that you give it some of your breath.
See, this is where your beautiful, beautiful openness to things being more interesting than they are, it works against you, because it's just a cheap misdirection. It was just wants you to wonder, oh, is the cat actually going to steal her breath? Was it competing with the goblin for her breath? But then she just wakes up and they nuzzle.
Are you sure?
Heartwarming, 100%.
That's not the movie I saw, Jason.
That did remind me that there was one other thing I wanted to mention in Cat's Eye.
No, we're done.
Hell to the King is a special presentation of the Cinesthesia podcast, produced by Iguanadonald Studios, and distributed by Split Tooth Media. Music by Loyalty Freak. Hell to the King is recorded live before E, except after C.
Cat's Eye!
Cinesthesia.